Well, hello there, you beautiful, beautiful, amazing, wonderful people. I hope you are all well on this terrific, terrific Tuesday. You're looking absolutely amazing. Guess what? You're in for a treat in this video because we're going to be watching Nancy Grace together. Because the other day, right, she released a video and it was saying about Brian Koberger dressing like Ted Bundy. And that video garnered over 100,000 views, right? And you can just imagine the comments. And I spoke about it. And her videos also, I covered it in a video yesterday, knock-on effect on Reddit, where they were talking about her connection to the victims, her saying that basically there is a connection there. And if you missed that, go and watch it. But later on, I'm going to be talking in another video. I'm going to give you a third one because I'm amazing. So subscribe and like and all that good stuff because I deserve it because I'm amazing. But yeah, she's done another fucking video about Brian Koberger dressing like Ted Bundy again. We're gonna go through it together because it's getting to the point where this is the ramblings of a mad person. I have seen things similar to what comes out of Nancy Disgrace's mouth that are written on the wall of a mental asylum, and they're written in shit. I don't understand it for the life of me. I get where some people will be pro burgers, some people will be kind of in the middle, some people will just be truth seekers, and some people will be balls deep up to their nuts in Brian Koberger being guilty, and they don't really give a fuck about anything, and they will just say any kind of mental shit that they can just to make him out that he's a lunatic killer. So let's get on with this because I don't know whether I'm going to make it all the way through. We'll see how it goes. But let's listen to this, right? Because this is. Tell me that it's anything other than the ramblings of a fucking lunatic.
A haunting selfie emerges. Oh, there you go. Of Brian Koberger dressed like Ted Bundy. Now,
and I said this the other day. Please, right? This is your challenge if you choose to accept it, right? Please, 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 if you can anywhere find just one picture of Ted Bundy dressed in a motherfucking hoodie, please get it sent to me. Please, please, please get it sent to me. I just want to see a picture of Ted Bundy dressed like this that's on the screen. That image there that was like, whoa, there he is. I absolutely want to see a Ted Bundy picture like that because I can't find it anywhere. So wherever she's finding a picture from with Ted Bundy in a motherfucking hoodie, I don't know. But please, please, please email it to me. I'm waiting on it now, and I can't wait to see it.
why would the white bread boy from the Poconos dress like Ted Bundy and take eerie selfies? You know what? Before we even get to the news, I need a drink and a shrink. But
I couldn't agree more. I need a drink and a shrink. Yeah, couldn't fucking agree more. And again, for the aforementioned reasons, to say that the fucking hoodie that Brian Koberger is wearing is a WSU hoodie. It's literally the hoodie that is the merchandise sold by the very university that he is studying and has a position at. And he's wearing it. And he's taking a picture of himself and saying it's an airy fucking selfie. How popular is taking selfies? If you're saying that someone who takes a selfie in their fucking school hoodie, then I need to keep an eye on my kids, I'm telling you. I need, especially the girls, because they take fucking thousands. I think the Snapchat scores, isn't there? Snapchat scores when you upload pictures, and they are literally in the hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands, their scores. So I'll tell you what, I'm raising killers, baby. I'm raising killers. I might come to regret that, especially with Freya, little lunatic.
I'm a teetotaler. So straight out to Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us. Bethany, why? Why is he all dressed like Ted Bundy for a series of selfies. He actually
Nancy,
looks like he's the star in a slice and dice movie. What?
that's
What is
right,
this?
Dexter. Nancy, this tells me that had he not been apprehended, he would have gone on to kill.
Fuck! What are you fucking talking about? this picture, this picture, Nancy. When I look at it, when I look at this WSU student wearing a WSU hoodie and taking a selfie, this tells me that if he hadn't have been apprehended, he would have gone on to do more. Because I'm telling you now, there is a correlation between hoodie wearing selfie takers and murders and mass murders. Absolutely 100%. It's been proven. There are statistics out there that shows that the likelihood... What am I wearing? What am I wearing? I've not killed anyone. I'm telling you now. And I have taken selfies and I wear hoodies. But no, just looking at that picture, you can tell. You can absolutely tell that he was going to go on to do more. Obviously, I'm in the wrong job.
Ted Bundy is his idol, and Ted Bundy is a serial killer, killed men, killed women, had a completely deviant life. That this tells me that this was Brian Koberger's first rodeo, this first mass killing, and this was just practicing for all the killings to come. This is his...
What the fuck? How do you get that information just from selfies of Brian Koberger on a WSU hoodie? I don't understand it. And let's not forget that some of these pictures as well were specifically manipulated by Dateline. They literally turned around and said, "Yeah, we've enhanced them to improve quality." No, you didn't. You cropped him out and enlarged them to make them look more sinister, because he would have been on his own. Now, we don't know if the bigger picture of that was him amongst 15 other people wearing exactly the same fucking thing, do we? Because you cropped him. You cropped him, lied about it, and then put them forward because you knew that they would look more sinister. And it seems to have worked, because these pair of dumb motherfuckers seem to think that just because he's wearing a hoodie, that seems to suggest that, that later on down the line, he was going to do loads of murders. Oh, I've never heard anything so fucking stupid in my life. Can it get any worse? We're not even 2 minutes in.
So he's going to form his entire offending pattern around his idol. This is...
And who the fuck said that Ted Bundy... How have we got to Ted Bundy is his idol? You've made that up. You've literally made it up. There is nothing apart from the ramblings of nutcases that would say that Ted Bundy was Brian Koberger's idol. How are we drawing conversation off of a statement that has no bearing in reality, in fact? I genuinely don't fucking understand.
Evidence that Brian Koberger should never, ever be let loose in society again.
I'm trying to figure out why Mr. Button-Down Oxford shirt is dressing like Ted Bundy and a selfie. This says something, Bethany, something deeper than I learned in law school. Why is he dressing up like Ted Bundy? It means something, for Pete's sake.
The first patient I ever saw as an intern, I was 25 years old, was a young woman who looked like Little Bo Peep from the waist up and like a hooker from the waist down. She had fishnet stockings, stiletto heels. She was a church secretary. And so she had this duality in her personality. And this is what I see in Brian Koberger. In fact, we call it a vertical split in my field. Where
what are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? What? So we've now gone to someone who dresses like Little Bo Peep, got like hooker legs and fucking churchgoer's top, and they're saying like his some kind of duality to his, because he'll wear a hoodie in one photograph and then wear a fucking shirt in another. What are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? So what are we saying? That he should just wear hoodies forever, and I'm getting quite warm, and not wear anything else, and take a picture of him wearing anything else? I would imagine that he's probably wearing a fucking shirt because he wears a shirt when he goes to work. And I'm guessing that he's wearing a black fucking WSU hoodie because when he's not working, he's chilling out, he wears a fucking hoodie. That's got nothing to do with being a mass murderer or being a hooker.
Half of the person's personality could be deviant, naughty, counter society, maybe even homicidal. And the other part is sort of like a do-gooder. And the two sides are not integrated. They could go and give a birthday cake to grandma and celebrate grandma and then go rape the old lady next door. So it's very scary when you see.
Fuck. Do you know at the beginning when I said that this is literally the ramblings of a nutcase? That is genuine. I didn't even think it was going to get that bad because I literally haven't watched it. This is just me reacting to ramblings of a nutter. I genuinely don't get it. I don't understand what they're saying. This is clearly a WSU hoodie that he's got from the campus and he's wearing it. You know, what are we trying to say? That he's dressing now because he's going to go out murdering? So what are we saying? That he was going to go out murdering in a WSU hoodie? That was going to be his kill suit? I don't know. Are we saying that you shouldn't wear black hoodies? WSU shouldn't sell or supply black hoodies with WSU written on them? And if they have, which they have, and anybody has bought them, then people need to be put under 24-hour surveillance. And if they then go off somewhere and then put a shirt on, that's even more indicative of the fact that they're psychopaths.
Kinds of lack of integration with people who have certain types of pathology because
how can that be a lack of integration? It's literally a WSU fucking hoodie. That, if anything, is absolute integration. That is buying the merchandise of the place where you're training and studying and working. That is all about integration. That's literally the opposite of what she's talking about.
tells you the deviant side could be so deep because it's hidden even from their own consciousness sometimes. Well, let's think of a vertical split as on one side is all the aspirational goodness, their families whom they rely upon. In the case of Brian Koberger, teaching in a class, learning about law, trying to flirt with women, but he was a family guy. He lived with his family for a long time.
Do you notice as well, a lot of these pictures that you're taking, they don't look like they're selfies. They look like they're photographs that are perhaps taken, like I say, in more of a group setting, and they've caught Brian either talking to someone or interacting off the shot of the camera, and that's what they have caught. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you took a picture of a group of people and some of the people in that photograph were in the middle of fucking yawning or in the middle of turning and speaking to someone or waving, and they're capturing that moment but then breaking it out and putting that up. They weren't selfies. They weren't photographs that he had took himself, because he'd have been looking straight at the fucking camera. They look like he's in the middle of fucking mid-yawn or mid-chat with someone. That's my opinion, by the way. I can't turn around and say that's absolute fact. But when I look at some of them photographs, they don't look like actual selfies. They look like a picture that's been broken away from a larger setting, and they're capturing him in a mid-moment of doing something else that would not be a photographic pose. But I could be wrong.
On the other side of the split, all the evil side. I mean, the church secretary that looked like Little Bo Peep from the waist up and a hooker from the waist down was having affairs with other pastors through the church computer, but she was the church greeter on Sunday morning. So it's the lack of integration, I think, in which these kinds of actions foment. So the BTK killer, he would measure people's grasp.
The theory that Madison Mogen may have been the intended target. And now we are now getting, which I'm about to get to, I'm leading up to it, information as to how we've heard all along. The prosecutors came out in open court and said we have no evidence that the victims were stalked on social media.
This will be interesting to see where she goes with this, because let's just ram that home for a second. You can't turn around and say that Madison Mogen was the intended target from if it was Brian Koberger, while simultaneously saying there's absolutely no connection. Because if Madison Mogen was the intended target and they want to go down that route, then they have to establish a connection to bolster that claim. You can't just turn around and say it. And I'll tell you why they say it, because unless fucking be honest, out of all of the victims, Maddie is the one that's gonna come across as the most pretty, isn't she? The little petite young blonde Maddie, girl next door. She's gonna be the one that they utilize to push this more, that kind of crime, because it's gonna fit better. Do you know what I mean? Than perhaps Xana, who was with somebody, and Kaylee Gonsalves, who, if you look at Madison, she would have probably fitted a certain type of girl over. And I'm trying to remain as respectful as possible, but you know what I'm getting at. The little petite blonde is going to be the fucking target out of them, isn't she?
There was a lot of talk that Koberger had stalked the victims. In that vein, it was believed for a long period of time that Kaylee Gonsalves was the intended victim. It wasn't that the accepted theory at the get-go, Dave Mack, that somehow Kelly was the intended victim and the others were tangential. Now we're hearing that new information, Maddie Mogen may have been the killer's intended target.
Well, it's not new, is it? It was always said originally that the intended target was most likely Maddie. It was only kind of, I would suggest that it was the people like myself who considered Kaylee Gonsalves, because Kaylee Gonsalves weren't someone who lived there. She weren't supposed to be there. And when you factor in the fact that you've got UC Davis versus Idaho, so this was kind of a game night, if you like. So in terms of that house, with the amount of cars outside and the potential of that house being full of people, you have to question, why would a stranger have ventured in here with so much risk? There would have had to have been a catalyst that meant that this has to happen on this night. And that's when you then go down the route of, well, Kaylee Gonsalves is kind of the odd one out here. She seems to have been requested to come back over by Dylan Mortensen, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Dylan, in fact, who had told her to come over as her plus one. And we get into the realms of why on this night, what's the oddment? Kaylee Gonsalves, we hear about the injuries that she sustained as well, which again further promotes almost like an anger, a real rage towards that individual. So then you go off on it could potentially be her. But I think from the very start, this targeted and isolated statement that was made by law enforcement and trying to push this narrative is trying to work out whether that was just a knee-jerk reaction to try and stem public concern, or that they had prior knowledge, or they knew of something that most likely meant that this killing happened in this house and remained contained within it, and it didn't go beyond that. If you're thinking that this is an outsider who's entering into people's homes at night and literally killing people and they're mass murderers, then would law enforcement have not put more sort of, I don't know, more in regards to making sure that people protected themselves and said that there is a heightened risk, there is a danger out there? I don't get it. There's just something that don't sit quite right with me there. But let's carry on.
The first talking about targeting and who was the first one, that actually came from the Gonsalves family. You remember in the very early parts of the investigation, they were very public talking about the investigation and wanting information. And they were given certain information and that led them to believe and led them to say that Kaylee was the target in their mind's eye. That's what they saw. Now we're hearing that that may not be the case. Again, now we go back to the world of Joseph Scott Morgan, because I don't know how you can determine when you've got two young women in the same location.
Joseph Scott Morgan is who I spoke about in video 1 earlier today. He's come and waded in on it. So if you missed that video, again, go check it out. I'll put the link to that video in the pinned comment down below. And again, if you're not subscribed, get subscribed and like the video if you haven't done that already as well.
Both being killed with a knife, how you determine who was killed first.
Now we must deduce, we must extrapolate based on what we know. Joining me is a renowned homicide investigator, Chris McDonough, director, Cold Case Foundation.
Oh, fuck me. Here we go. Here we go. This is going to get interesting. Chris McDonough, for those of you who don't know, he is a retired cop, part of the Cold Case Foundation. And he has been involved in some controversy over the years around the Gabby Petito case, where he would wrongfully accuse someone of being Brian Laundrie and nearly destroyed that poor motherfucker's life and got himself temporarily banned from the platform. And then we have other cases previously where he controversially utilized the Reed technique in coercing a 14-year-old boy, Michael Crow, to admit to a murder that he didn't commit, that was subsequently turned into a film or a documentary. But Chris McDonough, yes, I don't like him. Let's go. Let's go back.
Okay, Chris, go with me on this and jump in. So he gets invited to the pool party. I think the same pool party the neighbor invited him to, so he could make friends. All right. He's at the pool party. That night, July 9, begins his trips to where the murders occurred, the King Road murder scene. Then we find photos in his cell phone of women, girls, students in swimsuits. Were those girls at the pool party? Because now we learn, last step, that on social, the girls in the swimsuits were social media friends online with the victims.
So this is, again, where we go into the realms of, do we know that that's absolutely accurate? And what does that tell you in the grander scheme of things? Brian Kohberger gets invited to a pool party. He goes to a pool party. There was photographs taken. I would imagine that 99.995% of people took photographs at this pool party. I note that they try to make out that this is creepy, but the point being that Brian Kohberger was very likely invited to that place. He wouldn't have just randomly scaled the fence and jumped in. Do you know what I mean? Someone invited him there. He wouldn't have necessarily been there on his own. And he was interacting with people. We know, and some people were like, I spoke about the phone number exchange between him and this female, and I got told off yesterday saying, no, Brian Kohberger took her phone and forcibly put his number into her phone. Get your fucking facts right. The point being, they had exchanged fucking numbers. There was an exchange of numbers. He messaged her, she ignored him, and he never fucking messaged her back, as far as I'm concerned. So there was nothing fucking weird or wonderful or beyond the realms of normality in that interaction. There was nothing fucking odd about it. Nothing odd whatsoever. And bearing in mind that the guy is ASD as well, again, I can't fault that situation in any way, shape or form. We've all been youngsters. We've all been kids. We've all grown up. Some of us went to university. Some of us went to college. Some of us have been to these parties and multiple parties and house parties and interacted with girls and took fucking photographs. Get a fucking grip. Let's see what these pair of fucking numpties say about it.
So all along we're like, how did he find these victims? How did he target them? Does it all go back to the innocent pool party? He's at the pool party. He sees women. He takes pictures of the women in their swimsuits. He looks them up on...
How do you know that he was specifically taking photographs of them? Again, a speculation. If he's taken photographs, who the fuck was he there with? Was he taking photographs of him and his friends and these girls just happened to be there? Did he know who they were? Were they people who he was familiar with? And if there's nobody fucking at this party, if it's a pool party, for fuck's sake, then how are you going to take a photograph of anything without getting a picture of a fucking female in a bathing suit? Unless he's walking around taking pictures of fucking plants. Then you're going to think he's an even bigger weirdo because he's at a party, a pool party with students and girls everywhere with their swimming gear on, and he's taking fucking pictures of chrysanthemums in the corner or building architectural photographs. And you think, well, he's a fucking bender, isn't he? Oh, my word. And again, we have been told there is no connection between Brian Kohberger and these individuals, the victims. There is no connection, nothing that connects him to them. So this very thing that you're talking about would be a connection. That is one thing that they would say, yes, there is a connection there. Now, would it be possible to take a picture of somebody when you're talking about two neighboring university towns, to take a picture of someone that they are going to be friends with someone? It's very likely that it would be harder to take a picture of someone who wasn't friends with somebody. And also, just because they're friends on social media or there's a connection on social media, don't mean that they're actually friends with them in real life. How many people have thousands of friends on their social media, but they've never even met them? They don't fucking know them. They've never spoken to them in real life either. So again, it means nothing. When you're talking about social media connections, that is not indicative of a real life connection. It just isn't. It just isn't. You can have somebody who joins or hashtagged a university and you see pictures and you like them and you follow them because you like the picture. And these are just people who you like and follow because you're aware that they are a student just like you. But they are people that you are never, ever going to physically interact with.
He finds their online friends and targets them.
But he would have had to have searched. I don't fucking get it. Oh, my word.
That's not just a coincidence. There is no coincidence in criminal law, McDonough.
Right. No, it's like the hunter who is trying to figure out where the deer hang out. He's a sadistic sexual predator. And
why would you even say that? There was no, even if you want to go down the route of this was Brian Kohberger and he did it. They have literally stated that there was no signs of that kind of behavior, like what he's just said, a sadistic sexual predator or whatever. There's nothing to do with that in this crime whatsoever. This was a rage-fueled, very personal, rage-fueled attack of so far removed from that. But you make me sick.
Starts with finding your victimology. It starts with finding girls, if that's going to be his victimology, and then it's going to talk in his head.
He also killed a guy. He just killed so it wasn't just females, was it? Why does everyone conveniently ignore Ethan Chapin and also ignore the fact that if the injuries sustained by Ethan Chapin, what we learned, are accurate, then he took just as much time on that person than he did anyone else. The finality of it, the wanting to make sure that it was done, a done deal, the personal attack, the very, it was like, again, just anger, so much rage. Brian Kohberger just don't look like he's got that fucking rage. He don't look like he could punch his way out of a wet paper bag.
Talking about fantasy, that he's going to tie it to his model. And who's his model? Well, right now, the evidence is showing that it could be Ted Bundy. And if that's the case...
Again, another fucking idiot who's saying about Ted Bundy. The guy is a criminology student. And he was doing papers on serial killers and murderers and getting into the mind of killers. Ted Bundy is one of the most, if not the most, famous and prolific serial killers ever. And that's worldwide, really. But certainly from a US perspective, Ted Bundy would be the most famous. You know, he's not the only, and there are some who deserve as much recognition. Jeffrey Dahmer, for instance, again, very similar on par to BTK again. So there's a lot of them. But Ted Bundy, if you was to go and do 100 people in the US and say, name me a serial killer, I would say that 80-90% of them would say Ted Bundy. Tell me down below if I'm wrong. So look, I don't see anything odd about a criminology student studying and looking up Ted Bundy. I'd find it more bizarre if he was there and he wasn't doing it, because that to me would be almost like he's at the university for a different reason. And it's the lack of evidence of him integrating into his course would be evidence to suggest that he is doing something else. You know, when he's got spare minutes and he's online, he is searching other stuff. And look, there we have got some things about porn searches that he did, but the guy's got a dick. Do you know what I mean? And again, some people are fucking weird. So who knows? And again, it might have been with respect of, was he looking at the psychology behind Ted Bundy and what they labeled him as and what kind of things that he would have then been kind of had a penchant for. Who knows?
Who was Ted Bundy stalking? He was stalking sorority girls. And now the very first murder, if Brian Koberger's your...
Ted Bundy was not stalking sorority girls. Ted Bundy fucking killed loads of different types of people, from males to females to young children. Do you know what I mean? A young kid. It wasn't that like a real young, his last one. He just happened to go in at a fucking sorority when he knew that his days were numbered. Do you know what I mean? Oh, look, there he is in his fucking hoodie. You daft twats.
He picks a house with 5 girls. And is the pool party connected? Well, we don't know.
He picks a house with 5 girls. What is he fucking talking about? We know that there's multiple girls connected to this house. Do you know what I mean? Multiple girls connected to this house. In Ashland, whatever her fucking name is for a start, so she was connected to it, and multiple people who would be at this house were parties. So that it wasn't so much that there was only 5, and this was a fucking party house. This was an absolute party house. After that, I think that'd have been quite difficult to understand who actually lived at this fucking house. There were so many people coming and going, and Kaylee, she didn't even fucking live there. So she was only back there on that night. Then you've obviously, I don't know. And again, we've got no connection, no evidence of stalking. And what you're now talking about is trying to suggest that he picked this house because he knew exactly who was in it, which he would have only done if he was stalking him.
But we know he was organized. And we go back to the sheath for a moment.
We know he was organized. We know he was organized. Right, check this out. Right, I've got to read this to you. Right, Brian knew not to search his victims prior to the crimes, but drove his own car, left an eyewitness alive, left a knife sheath he purchased online with his DNA on it, went into a house with 6 cars out front, and did it in a neighbourhood with only one way in and one way out, and cameras everywhere that he drove around all and got caught on fucking most of them. At the exact same time as a DoorDash order was arriving, and tore out the neighbourhood like a bat out of hell, nearly running some poor fucker over apparently, which would have absolutely guaranteed drawing attention to you and your car and the time frame and this person. But yeah, he didn't search Kaylee, Maddie and Xana because he's a brilliant criminologist. That's fucking right. We know that, and this silly motherfucker here, we know that he was organised. On the contrary, if it was Brian Koberger, he was the least fucking organized person to have ever committed this type of crime in the history of crimes. He will go down as the stupidest motherfucker in history if it is proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he's done it.
If Xana is the gal that walked up and disturbed him, that's probably the time he dropped the sheath. And that's when it went disorganized. And he probably, if in fact he chased her, that was the time. And that probably explains how the sheath got there.
And again, we're going down the route of this story now, this Dateline story that Xana went upstairs and he's chased around a fucking house like a silent movie because the other two people in the house who survived didn't hear none of it. Do you know what I mean? They didn't hear. Was Xana running through the house, not screaming, not shouting for fucking help? She's just silent. And they're running right outside Dylan Mortensen's door and she don't fucking hear anything? Get to fuck, man. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Place. So is it past possibility? No, it's a probability. And it's also a probability that when he was taking that secondary selfie, that we're going to find a lot of information on that digital footprint of his phone. And it won't surprise me the type of porn that we find on that phone is going to be very sadistic.
Okay, that's...
Of course it is. Of course it is definitely going to be sadistic. Well, he's dressing like Ted Bundy. I can't listen to that anymore. I've heard enough. I've heard enough. So Brian Koberger dressing like Ted Bundy. What did we learn from that? Brian Koberger dresses like Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is his idol. He goes to parties, I don't know, to take pictures of girls in bikinis. And he's very organised. He didn't stalk, but somehow did stalk because he learned who was in this house and he went over to this house and did this crime because he was very, very organised, despite evidence suggesting that he absolutely wasn't organised if he was the person who did it. I don't know. All I know is that, again, the vast majority of what we have just listened to there belongs on the wall of the aforementioned mental asylum, but written in shit. Let me know down below what you think. Love you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Again, one last time, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We do multiple videos every day. Smash like if you haven't already. And I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.